Been another protest in the city of Makhanda because of more water problems there. In other words, residents simply aren't getting the water they're supposed to get. There have been long-running problems in that city. Back to 2020, the gift of the givers helped them to bore a hole, to do a borehole to get some water. Meanwhile, Rhodes University, as I understand it, taking over the sewage works to help Makhanda manage the situation. Now it seems the problems are back there. Philip Machanick is the vice chair of the Makana Residents Association. Philip, good afternoon to you. How bad is it? Do you get water at all from the taps there?
Good afternoon, Stephen, and those who are able to listen during load shedding. Some people have not had water for weeks. Officially, it's 1 day on, 2 days off. And, the situation now should be a lot better than, you mentioned 2020, it was actually 2019 when things started to get really bad. Because back then we had a serious drought, and we're not in drought anymore. The drought has broken months ago, and yet things are getting worse and worse. Now, in February last year, Lungile Mkube, who was then in the council, wrote letters to both the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee and the Minister of Water and Sanitation, pointing out some real serious issues, and demanded a forensic audit of the way Amatola Water Board has been handling tenders, and also a skills audit of the way Makana Water is actually managed, because there are serious issues on both fronts. Just look at the one big area of concern, which is the James Claynant's Waterworks, which gets its water from a national scheme, so there's never been a shortage there. We've actually traced back spending on that water plant back to 2010 that adds up to 600 million rand. And, if you correct for inflation, it's even more than that in today's terms. And for that kind of money, we could have fixed all of the water and sanitation problems throughout Makana. And, this is not the only amount of fruitless, wasteful expenditure. We found around 10 million was spent, for instance, on refurbishing the Jamison Dam, which doesn't supply any water at all to the city. And in fact, we found something like 50 cows and numerous goats on the property there. And when we raised this and made a public concern, suddenly the animals disappeared. So, it's gross mismanagement, incompetence, financial mismanagement, huge amounts of money going astray. And 600 million rand in fruitless and wasteful expenditures, not a small amount. And yet when we wrote to the National Parliamentary Portfolio Committee chair and to the minister, we got no response. So, news for good people of South Africa, you have a government that does not care.
Philip, they spent 10 million rand on the wrong dam. Is that right? Why would someone do that?
Who knows? And, it's possible there was some project at some point to refurbish the pipeline from that dam to town, but we don't know if that project ever got off the ground. But that same 10 million could have much more productively been spent on fixing leaks. And that's another area with an enormous problem, is that when a major leak occurs, half a town gets switched off, and the isolation valves should be possible to switch off just a small part of town. And then sometimes it takes 3 or 4 tries before a leak is fixed. So there's a serious issue in terms of having the right skills and competence in place in the local work, as well as in the Amatola Water Board, which handles the bigger projects. And then there's another issue as well, that 2019 onwards, a lot of boreholes were drilled. And this includes some on the Rhodes University campus. And something like 4 million rand was spent on a water treatment plant to remove the iron from those boreholes to make the water usable. And yet we've heard no evidence that that water is actually being used. So large amounts of money are being spent. And, it seems to us that water and sanitation are a big cash cow. And it's a gift that keeps on giving. If the project fails, it just gets done again.
Philip,
in the meantime, people are suffering.
All right, Philip, that's a big claim to make. It's one thing to say that a municipality or the Amatola Water Board lacks any kind of capacity, and we've seen that in other parts of the country too. But you need hard evidence of corruption. I understand the misspending. It's a huge amount of money to spend and not actually have water at the end of it. But is there any sort of evidence to show that the money's been deliberately misspent?
Well, 600 million rand has been spent with very little effect, and there's been no consequences. What other conclusions do you draw? And, that money must have gone somewhere. This is why we call for a forensic audit. We can't say definitely it's corruption until that is done. But why has it not been done? The people are really struggling. In some areas, there's no water for weeks at a stretch. There's a spring outside town that people who are lucky enough to have a car can go to get water. Even if you go there after dark, you have to queue up for more than an hour to get to the water. So we need real action here. And the one person who actually has the capacity to intervene is the National Minister of Water and Sanitation, because they are actually empowered to intervene in a crisis situation where water supply is failing. And we appealed to them in February last year and we got no response.
If I remember correctly, the municipality, the ANC, just in power there after the 2021 local government elections. Often, yes, when a political party is about to lose power, you suddenly get a lot more interest in governance. I would have thought that the municipality would be taking this very seriously. Is there any evidence that they are?
No, not as such, no. I mean, I don't want to go into a whole lot of detail on this because it's not the point of the issue, but Makana Citizens Front was taken on to chase exactly these issues, and we were doing so. And then a faction pushed the original councillors out of council in April last year, and the whole thing ground to a halt. But I don't want to go into that because they're not here to give their view of it. But yes, in principle, you're right. In a council where the ANC is a bare majority of one, these issues ought to be taken a whole lot more seriously.
The impact on the local community, I mean, it must have such a big impact on schools, I mean, on the police station, on the university. I mean, the impact must just be huge. People can't live a normal life at all.
Well, there's also the National Arts Festival coming up in June, so something serious needs to be done before then. And, the residents have more money put in rain tanks, but what do the poor do? And, water is a basic right. It impacts on people's dignity. And, people are spending a lot of time just looking for water. The municipality is sending water trucks around. And they send out pictures of throngs of people around these water trucks as if this is a great achievement. But to me, it's a picture of failure that people are having to struggle so much for such a basic commodity.
Thank you very much indeed. Philip Machanick speaks on behalf of he's the Vice Chair of the Makana Residents Association. That's the situation in Makhanda.